Welcome to Nordic Love Stories. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, because every town has a story proving that one act of kindness can change a life forever. The old cowboys used to say that a saddle can carry a man across the wildest land, but only an honest heart can carry him home. One forgotten autumn morning, a stranger stepped into a lonely valley where nobody knew his name. His clothes were faded, his boots were cracked, and dust covered every inch of his face. The people who saw him believed he was another poor drifter searching for work. None of them could imagine that beneath the worn shirt stood one of the wealthiest cattle owners in the entire territory. His real name was Nathan Cross, but for the first time in his life, he introduced himself only as Nate. At 60 years old, he had everything money could buy except the one thing he desired most, a woman who would love the man instead of the fortune behind his name. After losing the woman he truly loved many years earlier, Nathan spent decades building the largest ranch in the region. As his wealth grew, so did the number of people pretending to care about him. Every smile seemed tied to his land. Every compliment carried the weight of hidden greed. Tired of empty promises, he left his mansion behind, dressed like a wandering cowboy, and swore he would never reveal his identity until someone valued his character above his riches. His journey was harder than he imagined. At one roadside store, wealthy travelers laughed at his torn clothes. A ranch foreman chased him away before he could ask for work. Children whispered that he looked like a man who had lost everything. Nate never argued. Every cruel word reminded him why he had chosen this lonely path. As the sun disappeared behind the distant hills, he noticed a small, weather-beaten cabin standing beside a broken windmill. Smoke curled gently from the chimney, and a tiny vegetable garden struggled against the dry earth. Sitting on the porch was a woman quietly mending an old blanket beneath the fading light. Her name was Clara Hayes. Her dress had been stitched together so many times that hardly any of the original fabric remained, yet her eyes still carried warmth that hardship had never stolen. She looked up as Nate approached. "Evening," she said softly. "You look tired." Nate removed his hat. "I've walked since sunrise. I was hoping to earn a meal." Clara studied him for a moment before opening the wooden gate. "Around here, a hungry traveler eats first. Work can wait until morning." Inside the little cabin, the smell of fresh vegetable stew filled the room. The shelves held only a few jars of beans, flour, and dried herbs. It was obvious that food was scarce. Clara placed a steaming bowl in front of Nate and quietly tore the last 2 pieces of homemade bread in half. She gave him the larger portion without saying a word. Nate noticed she kept only a tiny piece for herself. "You should eat more," he said gently. Clara smiled. "Seeing someone leave my table hungry hurts more than an empty stomach." Her simple answer struck deeper than any speech he had ever heard. During supper, a soft knock echoed at the door. When Clara opened it, 2 frightened children stood outside, holding an empty basket. Their mother had fallen ill, and they had not eaten since the day before. Without hesitation, Clara carried her own untouched bowl of stew to them, added the last loaf of bread from her shelf, and wished them safe travels. Nate watched in complete silence. She had just given away tomorrow's breakfast without expecting anything in return. In that quiet moment, he realized he had finally met someone whose kindness existed even in poverty. As darkness settled across the valley and the wind whispered through the old windmill, Nate looked at the nearly empty kitchen and made a silent promise. He would protect this remarkable woman no matter what it cost, even if she never learned the truth about the stranger who had just entered her life. Morning arrived with a cold breeze sweeping across the valley, and Nate was already outside, repairing the broken fence before Clara opened the cabin door. His hands, once used to signing ranch contracts, struggled against rough wood and rusty nails, but he refused to stop. Every blister reminded him that an honest life could never be bought with money alone. Clara watched quietly before placing a tin cup of fresh coffee beside him. "Most men leave before sunrise," she said. Nate smiled without looking up. "I'm not most men." She nodded and returned to feeding her chickens. The days slowly settled into a peaceful routine. Nate repaired the windmill, strengthened the chicken coop, cleared weeds from the garden, and carried heavy buckets of water from the creek without being asked. Clara never praised him with grand words, yet every evening another place was quietly set for him at the dinner table. One afternoon, while gathering firewood in the nearby forest, they heard the frightened cry of a young boy. They hurried toward the sound and found a frightened child trapped beneath a fallen tree branch while his little sister desperately tried to free him. Without hesitation, Nate lifted the heavy log with every ounce of strength he had. His shoulders trembled, but he refused to let go until the boy crawled safely away. Clara wrapped the boy's bleeding leg with strips torn from her own apron before walking both children safely home. Their grateful mother tried to offer Clara a few silver coins, but she gently pushed the money back into the woman's hands. "Buy medicine," Clara whispered. "Your children need you healthy." Nate remained silent all the way back to the cabin. He had spent years donating fortunes through banks and lawyers, yet this woman gave away what little she owned without expecting recognition. That evening, another problem arrived. A wealthy cattle buyer named Victor Lang rode into the valley with several hired men. His polished boots and expensive coat stood in sharp contrast to the dusty road beneath him. He stopped outside Clara's property and smiled confidently. "Mrs. Hayes," he called, "I've come again with my offer. Sell me this land. I'll pay more than anyone else." Clara calmly shook her head. "This land holds my parents' graves. It isn't for sale." Victor's smile disappeared. "You can barely survive here. Think carefully." "My answer is the same." As Victor prepared to leave, his eyes settled on Nate. "And who's this?" Clara answered before Nate could speak. "A hard-working traveler," Victor laughed. "Then be careful. Poor men usually disappear when winter arrives." Nate said nothing, but Victor's words lingered in the air long after the horses disappeared down the road. Late that night, Nate stepped outside, unable to sleep. Moonlight covered the quiet ranch. Through the cabin window, he noticed Clara sitting alone beside the table, carefully counting a handful of coins. She sighed softly before placing them beside several unpaid bills. There wasn't enough. Not even close. A cold wind carried another sound across the yard. Clara coughed again and again until she leaned against the wall to catch her breath. Nate's heart tightened. Hidden inside his saddlebag, beneath an old blanket, rested a small leather pouch containing gold coins worth more than the entire valley. One gift could erase every debt, repair the ranch, and buy medicine. For years, his hand reached toward the bag, then slowly stopped. If he revealed his wealth now, would Clara believe every kind moment between them had been built on a lie? Before dawn, Nate made another promise to himself. He would help Clara, but he would earn her trust first, because the greatest gift he could offer was not his fortune, it was becoming the man she already believed him to be. Outside, the first rays of sunlight touched the distant hills, while far beyond the valley, riders from Nathan Cross's great ranch had already begun searching for the missing millionaire, unaware that each passing day was bringing them closer to discovering the truth. The search ended sooner than Nate expected. 3 days later, the sound of galloping horses echoed through the valley. A dozen riders stopped outside Clara's cabin, led by an older ranch foreman whose eyes widened the moment he saw the dusty stranger repairing the fence. "Mr. Cross," the foreman said quietly, removing his hat, "we've been looking for you everywhere." The hammer slipped from Nate's hand. Clara looked from the riders to the man she thought she knew. Confusion, slowly replacing the gentle smile on her face. "Mr. Cross," she whispered. Nate lowered his head. "My real name is Nathan Cross." Silence filled the yard. The foreman continued, "Your ranch cannot wait any longer. Buyers, lawyers, and the county sheriff are asking for you." Clara stepped back as though the ground beneath her had shifted. "You're the owner of Cross Ranch?" Nate answered softly. "Yes." "The richest cattle owner in the territory?" "Yes." Tears gathered in her eyes. "Then why did you let me believe you were poor?" Nate looked directly at her. "Because every person I met loved my fortune before they ever knew my heart. I wanted someone to see the man, not the money." Clara's voice trembled. "You watched me share my food when I barely had enough. You worked beside me, knowing you could have changed my life with a single coin." "I know," Nate replied, "and I will regret the pain my silence caused for the rest of my life." Clara quietly walked back into the cabin and closed the door. Nate stood motionless while the riders waited for orders. After several minutes, he turned to the foreman. "Take every wagon of supplies we have and deliver food, seed, medicine, and clean water to every struggling family in this valley. No family pays a single dollar." The foreman smiled proudly. "Right away, sir." By sunset, wagons filled with flour, vegetables, blankets, livestock feed, and medicine rolled into the valley. Families gathered in disbelief as children laughed, and elderly neighbors wiped away grateful tears. Yet Nate did not stand in the middle of the crowd seeking praise. Instead, he quietly repaired Clara's broken barn roof before the coming winter storms. The next morning, Clara opened her door and found him finishing the last wooden beam. "You could have gone home," she said. Nate nodded. "I could have." "Why didn't you?" He looked across the peaceful valley. "Because home stopped feeling like a mansion the day I met you." Clara remained silent. Nate continued, "My wealth can rebuild houses, but it cannot rebuild trust. Only time and honest actions can do that. If you never forgive me, I'll still be grateful you reminded me what kindness truly looks like." Days turned into weeks. Nate stayed, working beside the same neighbors who once believed he was only a wandering cowboy. He built a new schoolhouse, repaired wells, replaced broken fences, and created a free water system for every ranch in the valley. He never placed his name on a single building. One quiet evening, Clara walked to the old windmill where Nate was watching the sunset. She carried the same dented tin cup from the night they first met. She filled it with cool well water, took one sip, and handed it to him. Nate drank silently before looking into her eyes. Clara smiled gently. "The richest thing about you was never your ranch." She reached into her pocket and placed a simple silver band in his hand. "If you're still searching for someone who loves the man instead of the money, your journey is over." Nate slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands. As the golden sun disappeared, beyond the western hills, laughter echoed through the valley. Children ran between the green fields, and the lonely cabin that had once sheltered a tired stranger became the place where two faithful hearts finally found the home they had been searching for all along. Thank you for watching Nordic Love Stories. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable tales of love, courage, and kindness.